Welcome again to the Breaking Limits podcast series, a production of NeuroPedia Connect. And I am here, Dr. Vivian Pierre, with Emily Woods, my warrior parent. And we are here for something different today. We are talking about the power of belief in a space where we need to rewrite our own story. We're going to challenge that space. As parents of children with special needs, you can feel constantly pushing, like you're pushing through barriers emotionally, financially, societally, mentally. It's a journey filled with love, but often marked by isolation, unanswered questions, and moments that make you question if you're doing enough. Remember, Breaking Limits isn't just a show. We are building a movement, a voice for the voiceless parts of this parent's experience as they navigate the space for children with special needs. And today, understanding the power and where it is that that comes from within yourselves is where we are going to delve into. So, Emily, when we talk about the power of belief, we're talking about your self-identity. And I'm using you as an example just for the group of parents. But what we really want to really get into is this space that parents often feel when they're overwhelmed and life is kind of knocking them down. They feel like they're hitting their heads against the wall within the medical space, within the insurance space, trying to do things from day to day. And what's happening is they feel rather that they're isolated and alone. And so they question themselves. They feel very burdened and heavy by the weight from day to day. They feel isolated, right? Between the guilt and the grief and all these different things. And one of the things that we really want to highlight is, and this has to do with self-care. This has to do with the parent themselves, right? We focus so much on the kids and we focus on what they need, and they do need a lot.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I truly believe that parents are sacrificing themselves in a way that I want to challenge a little bit, that I feel like could be detrimental to that space, right? And allowing themselves to be able to write their own story. And it only starts with them. So I want to delve more into that. So in your space here a little bit, I just want you to tell me a little bit about your feelings in that space and your belief system. Let's go back 2-3 years even, about your space and your belief around the space, around having a child with special needs, and where your mindset was at that point, and what often a lot of parents' mindsets are.
I feel like there's a lot of eye-opening points throughout our entire journey. But if we're going back, if we go back 3-4 years, that was a time where we were seeing a lot of leaps and bounds in our growth and development for Georgie. And that was actually, we had kind of gotten into that space where we were living in our trailer. It was the first winter, and we took our first family trip to Europe. And so it was a little bit easier to navigate that at that time because she was small enough. She still fit in a baby stroller. So that kind of took out the questions about the equipment. But as we were going through one of the Christmas markets in Nuremberg, it was nighttime. We had just finished dinner and we just went out to kind of stroll around, and something caught her eye. We'd put her little jumpsuit on so she wouldn't get cold, and she just took off across the cobblestone, and all 5 of us were just like, do we catch her? Do we not catch her? What's going on here? Like, it just like, and it was like one of those slow motion moments. And I remember going to bed that night so excited that she had just taken off without a device, her own free will. And that was another one of those big pivotal moments, I think, that told me that letting go of what I thought I knew or how this should go in the beginning, it was all garbage. Let it go, throw it away, and let her lead the way.
I like that story. because we're going to look at three main powerful things today, and that's around reclaiming your vision, reclaiming your beliefs, and also reigniting your joy again. I think those are three really big things. So let's start with the vision. So if we look at, actually, before we start with the vision, I want to share a small parable with everyone, because this came up in this past week's parent empowerment program, our 8-week parent empowerment program. And it was about an individual. It's called the bridge parable. And it is from an individual called Edwin Friedman. And I think it really brings this home. So I want to set the stage for everybody really quickly. And it was about imagining that there's this man that he has been working his entire life to turn around and achieve something. And so he is, he moves one step forward and sometimes it's backwards. He gets knocked down, he gets back up, he feels like he's getting close, but he gets pushed back. And I know that many of us feel like that, often, right? Yeah. Whether or not you do have a kid with special needs or not, I feel like that's life, right? But picture this, he's walking across this bridge and he's finally found his path and he's moving forward on his path. And as he's walking across this bridge, in the distance, he sees a stranger. And the stranger, he can't quite make out what's happening, but he has a rope around his waist. And as he gets closer, he sees the rope and, he doesn't understand what the rope is for, but the stranger comes up to him and hands him the end of the rope. And the stranger asked the man to hold the rope just for a moment, mind you. And the man agreed with hesitation a little bit, but he took the direction, he held the rope, and the stranger said, "You need to hold on to the rope with 2 hands." And that's what he did. And with that, the man jumped off the bridge. And in jumping off the bridge, the man is shocked and he's holding onto this rope with this individual dangling outside the bridge. And as the fable goes, the weight of the man plus the rope, the man is struggling. It's just a little bit heavier than the man would be able to hold. So he's struggling with all his might. And he's saying, "I can't pull you up, I can't pull you up." The man's dangling and he's shouting to him, "You hold on to me because I'm your responsibility." And the man says, he doesn't ask for this, but the stranger's replying in that space that, that his life is basically in his hands. And if you let go, and if the man lets go, basically he falls. So the man is looking for people around to help. There's nobody there to help. And he's looking for a place to tie the rope, but there's nowhere to tie the rope. And he doesn't think of anything else, and he thinks that he can't do anything else. And the guy's confused, and he says, "Well, what do you want? What's happening? Like, pull yourself up." He gives him some direction because it dawns on him that, well, if the man can wrap the rope around him and he can pull, then maybe we can get the man up. And, because he's thinking, I can't hold on to this man for that long, and I have to do something different. And the stranger's replying, I can't pull. He doesn't do anything different. And the man on top of the bridge is saying, I can't hold on. In this space, I just want to pause here for a second, but in this space, they're kind of locked. Yeah. Right? The man that's crossing the bridge, he's not moving forward. The man that's dangling, there's no movement from him. He's not moving up the rope. He's not falling. We're just in this space of stuckness. And so many times in the space, we have a path. We feel like we're in a path. Remember, we talked about, a lot of parents feel like, well, we didn't ask for this, but this is what is. And, this is the rope that they're holding on to so tightly. And trying to figure out how to get past this space is where we are talking about today. Because the story goes that the man eventually says to himself, or rather to the stranger, after saying that, I can't hold on to this, we can't do anything different. He says, if I let go, the man on the bridge thinks all that he knows is that, well, he let the other person die. Or if he doesn't risk losing the momentum of where he's going, he feels like that opportunity will never happen again. So either way, he still is stuck. He doesn't know what to do. So to show his commitment to the goal, it says that he keeps asking the man to try and nothing happens. So when the revelation for the man on the bridge happens, he says, I will not accept the position of choice for your life, but only for my own. The decision for your life is up to you. You do the pulling and I will counter the way. The stranger called him selfish, called him all kinds of different names because he believed that the man on the bridge was responsible for him. How many times we feel as people are shouting and telling us things, and we feel this, this urge that what is it we're going to do because we're listening to people call us different names and tell us that we're doing something wrong or tell us that we're not enough. So at that point, the man waited, but there's no change in the tension of the rope. There's nothing happening from the man that's dangling. And he says, I accept your choice. And in that moment, the man on the bridge releases the rope. So the question is really, well, what happens to the man that was dangling on the rope? Well, upon releasing the rope, the man is able to now walk across the bridge. But there's so many interpretations of what happened to the person that's dangling, right? And what is it that you're holding on to, whether you're on top of the bridge, that you're holding on so tightly to something that's keeping you stuck, that's not allowing you to move forward, and or if you're the person dangling, what is it that you're not doing to help yourself even pull up the rope, or saying that I can't, there's nothing that I can do, and that it's somebody else's responsibility. It's somebody else's, way to turn around and deal with this or come up with the solution. And you have no control over that space. So I say this parable because I feel very strongly that a lot of parents in this space, they have told themselves stories about the different things that have happened because they're dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
And they're overcoming a lot. But in this space, they don't give themselves grace, right? And I want you to talk about that a little bit, right? They feel very burdened by the responsibility that they believe, or that everything becomes their responsibility, even in the direction of whether it's a spouse to spouse, whether it's a spouse to child, whether it's dealing with your other children, whether it's dealing with family members. So I want us to explore that space a little bit here today. And thinking of the story as to what is it that we're holding on so strongly to that we really need to be letting go of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's start with the first thing that I said, that the vision, right? How important is it to create that vision as part of where is it that we're going? So let's talk about that a little bit. So what's the vision, and how can we tune around and create that vision as to where is it that we can get across that bridge?
I think for parents in my situation, we get caught up in, this is what I had planned for my life.
Right.
I was going to do X, Y, and Z. And now the way I was going to do that is never going to work. I can't do that way. And I think going back to a previous episode, like when you get to that point where you have had that diagnosis or you're in the midst of trying to figure out what's going on, doesn't really matter. Realize that, yes, you have a child with special needs. So your plan didn't necessarily get diverted, but it's time to replan. Stop right there. Think about what it is that you actually have in your hands and where it is that you want to go. And maybe it's not the same, maybe you're not climbing up the rope, maybe you're letting go and you're using the stepping stones.
And in that space of finding out what that plan is, what I find is, in talking with a lot of parents, is that they feel the weight of the should. They feel the weight of other people's beliefs. They feel the weight of other people's thoughts, and so the action never becomes what they're creating. It really ends up being what they think other people think that they should create in a society where we are often, made to be in a box or put in some type of category that says we have to operate this way or this way or this way. And, well, every day it's something different. or what you guys are dealing with
Yeah.
is something different.
I think the earlier or the sooner that you can let go of the idea that anyone else knows where you're going or how you're going to get there, the better off you are. Because they don't. Like we've said before, your story, your case, your child and your journey is so individual to you that you cannot let someone else tell you what that's going to look like. They don't know the ins and outs of that.
Well, tell me, I want you to dive deep in. What's that internal belief system about maybe a parent is feeling about themselves in that space where they're holding on so tight, right? And they're trying to do everything right. What is it that they're telling themselves in the space that, where it is keeping them stuck? They're holding on to that rope. What is the things that they would be telling themselves? Like an example.
I think a lot of them are really just, I should be doing whatever anyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
The neighbor has 3 kids. I have 3 kids. Why can't I do it like they're doing it?
Right.
I should have my lawn mowed every Friday. I should have dinner on the table at 5 o'clock. I should have a new car. I should have whatever it is. I don't know. Whatever you're comparing yourself to. That's what we've got to let go of.
Well, one of my other favorite lines is comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And we compare ourselves a lot in that space. And in that space, we often lose ourselves and lose the vision. And, and we do get stuck in that space. Because what I have found is with the parents, when I speak with them, they're riddled by the thought that they aren't equipped to handle the kids' needs. So in that space, they're gripping and grasping for straws anywhere from any position, from anybody that they think might help. But in that space, if you ask, well, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Many times, to be quite honest with you, they don't have an answer. You guys don't have an answer, right? And so part of what I have had to do is really sit down and really try to pull that out of you guys. Like, what is it that you're trying to do? Because you're trying to really quiet, again, the noise from everybody else because you feel inadequate or you feel overwhelmed by the situation, right? So other parents seem to have it together, but, I'm constantly overwhelmed, right? Like, why can't I be better? Why can I know, more things? Why can I, quote unquote, fix my child, right? And that's a lot of the internal beliefs that come in. And I think that you're in looking at the vision and in looking at where we're going, I really truly believe that when you create those clear boundaries, when that man created that clear boundary that said, hey, I'm not responsible for you. I'm responsible for this and this and this, but I'm not responsible for you. He was able to let go of it. So when you can truly have that conversation with yourself and be, I think, true to yourself in that space, regardless of what other people may think, and I'm not saying this is an easy space to be in, but regardless of what other people may think about that space, that gives you a certain amount of clarity and power to stand in the space to make things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
In doing that. So what do you think that the next thing about rewriting your story, so the false beliefs that are coming up. So one, I want to highlight another big one, because it's not just around the child's needs. In the spouse to spouse interaction, right? It's who's doing it right and who's doing it wrong.
Oh yeah.
Right? It sounds like you went through that a little bit.
We still go through it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's an ever-evolving state, I think, for us.
Mm-hmm.
I love to try things for a period of time and reevaluate and change. That's how I feel like I can progress and move forward with whatever I'm working on. And sometimes I don't necessarily update my husband, and then he does it like the way I did it like 3 changes ago, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Right.
And it's, he's at work a lot. He's a full-time fireman, and he has several other jobs. So I don't always necessarily say, hey, by the way, I changed this, or I moved that, or, I mean, it doesn't even have to do with Georgia. It's just day-to-day life stuff, and he comes home and he's flustered. Where did you put this? Or why is she doing that? And what happened with this? And that's, I think, where the grace comes in.
But to improve that communication then.
You have to be aware You know, you have to have check-ins. You have to be deliberate in making sure that those things are known. And if you don't, that's where you start letting yourself down.
I like that word deliberate. Because as you were talking there, I was just thinking, and sorry to butt in just now, but I was just thinking around the communication space, right? So often, and I always say the kids are communicating, we're always communicating, whether we're saying anything, body language, anything. There's always communication going on.
Always.
Right? So this idea of, even in that spouse to spouse, what have you done to maybe help with this? Because one of the things that come up with the parents is that he doesn't understand, right? So many times one parent might be out working where the other parent is home with the kids and dealing with all the day-to-day type stuff. But the person that's out working may feel a certain sense of separation from what's actually happening, or that they feel like how they're letting you guys down in a certain space, and there is sometimes that comes up, honestly, is resentment that comes up, because again, when you're trying to navigate the space, there's a lot of emotions in that space. So the parent that's at home having this resentment that they feel because of the isolation, because maybe they're not talking to friends anymore, or because it's a lot for you to go out with your friends and your friends don't understand, so you kind of go apart. So that communication space though, like what are some of the things that you guys really worked on to really maybe help in that communication space?
I found that, and I'm going to just say, like, with therapy, we do 3 weeks at a time. If I don't call him every day and let him know what we've been working on, I forget. It gets lost in there. Like, it's in there. I know what we did because I was there. I was sitting there with the therapist. I was sitting there interacting in the therapy sessions. So I know everything that was going on. But if I wait until the next day, I might forget a piece of that, which is always a foundational piece to what we do the next day or the next time. And if he doesn't understand that progression, then he doesn't understand why I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing. So with that, it's a constant update, so that, I might have to write it down. I might have to remind him later. But I'm constantly, like, after we have done something for Georgia or even the boys, today this is what we did. And it's really, it's kind of like an every day we're checking in with these things. And some days it's harder because, he's busy at work. Today's a busier day, more training, more calls, more something like that. So I can't necessarily share it. Mm-hmm. And in that case, it's like I do my best to just text it to him to try and keep him in the loop so he can come back to it and check it later. And it's not perfect. By all means, we're still learning the best ways to do this. But the constant updates, while it sounds redundant and annoying, it's almost like that's how we operate best.
And I think, again, it goes down to being deliberate. And I think that in that space of whether you are reclaiming your vision, so one of the things that I know we've talked about in the past is that letting each other know, like, you guys are building something together, right? So having both of you guys in that space where you're not holding on to something and he's holding on to something else. And then, again, we're stuck on that bridge, as opposed to, hey, we're making these decisions together where we may disagree in different areas, but we're working through that because ultimately we want to keep moving forward on the bridge. We don't want these ideas that, we're not good enough, like we're going to fail our kids, we're comparing ourselves to other people, to turn around and do that. So maybe it's a family trip that you didn't think was possible, that you turn around and put down and say, okay, well, how do we do this? And that comes with that communication. And how does that work for the rest of our kids in that space? And I don't want you to go into that, but Emily travels a lot. And in that space of traveling a lot, we're going to do a where she's going to tell us how she deals with this travel. Yes, she's shaking her head, but this is exactly what we're going to deal with.
I travel a fair amount.
A lot in the comparison.
Fair amount.
Right. So one of the other, I think the other things I want to bring up here is another false belief about that the system is stacked against you. That I can't afford the care of my child's needs, right? And so many times people feel that, hey, because this is a big space, and it's a reality. It's this.
Yeah.
This is the thing about the beliefs, right? They're based in reality. It's about choosing what it is that we can control, the things that we can't control. But in that space of, if we're holding on so strong to this and we allow that to take over our lives, and we don't find the solutions to turn around and move forward in that space of, the system being stacked. You, for example, I know this about you, when you were dealing with the school system and the IEP world and figuring out things for your kids, because you currently homeschool, or is it now a hybrid, or
It's hybrid
hybrid now, but
We
you've
did.
gone through between, hey, my kids need to be in school, to like, no, they need to be homeschooled, to, hey, we could do a hybrid space, right? So talk a little bit just about about breaking that belief that, what, this is stacked against me and I don't have control over this, to I have control over this. I can let go of these things because I need to let go of these things to allow myself to move forward.
So this one was kind of backwards. In most of the time it starts and then it ends, and Georgia has everything to do with it. This one, it did start with her. She aged out of our early intervention program here in Utah, and they wanted to put her in the preschool in the district that we were in. And as we moved forward, again, this was in COVID, so she aged out and we started doing the meetings. But I remember when we started that transition, because it takes about 3 months, or it used to take 3 months, they started like, this is what's going to happen in the next meeting, this is what's going to happen in the next meeting. And they were definitely updating me about what was going to happen. But I had no idea what my options were. I had no idea what any of it meant. And it really didn't, I could go read the pamphlet that they handed me, but I had no idea what avenues and what options I really had within that.
All right.
And so we went along with what they were telling us, thinking these are the professionals. They know exactly what they're doing. They're the ones that that's our rope, that's our help. That's our avenue to what we need.
But it wasn't taking you where you wanted to go at that time. Because let's be clear, even as a healthcare professional, I know the system's broken. There are a lot of things that, that work in the system. And let me be clear about this. There are a lot of good people that are trying to work within a broken system.
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't work all the time. But in that space, I know that was not working for you. So in that space, what happened? Because that was the belief initially, right? Hey, they have all the answers. And then you said, you know what, wait a minute. I don't know if they have all the answers, because this isn't what I want. This is not what
Yeah.
So fast forward, like, as you turned around and do that, how did you end up getting to the point of like homeschooling, and what did that change for you?
So, I was going through the motions and doing all the things with Georgia, and her brother started having seizures. And so here we are re-navigating a perfectly healthy child who is now having seizure. Like, where did that even come from?
Right.
What's happening? And I was already like preemptively kind of angry with the healthcare system, because I was at the point where I was kind of catching on. Like,
angry with the healthcare system?
Really? Maybe. But, I just remember thinking, okay, I need a neurologist. And I was like, okay, well, I don't like any of the ones that are available to me here in Utah, but we had to go get one. We had to go get an MRI done, so I had to have one, right? So I go in and I see this one, and the man is not listening to me. Everything I brought up, everything that I said, because I'd already been down this road with Georgie, he's now telling me about this other child. And I'm like, and my son is sitting there with me in this meeting, and he looks at me, and he looks at the doctor, and he looks at me, and his eyes are getting wide. And I said, he's telling me that I can do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. This is absolutely not going to happen. We have to do da 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 da. And I just remember standing up and grabbing his arm and saying, we're done here. And we walked out. And I told the lady on the way out, I said, don't send me a bill, because it won't get paid. He didn't do his job. And my son's just doing this like, oh my gosh, that's so uncomfortable right now. Like, what did my mom just do? Like, this isn't what normally happens.
He didn't know his mom was a warrior parent, did he?
He didn't know what kind of bear walked in there with him that day. But I remember going home and telling my husband, I said, we can't work with this. We are not going to get what we need out of this. And at that point, we had to go and try and do an IEP for him to handle the rescue meds if he had a seizure at school. And that was absolutely insane. I was floored at what they were telling me they would do, because what I had proposed was absolutely not going to work for them. And here I'm going, have you ever seen a child have a seizure that is his size, and you want one person to carry him to the complete opposite end of the school into the office and give him his meds there rather than just keep him in the classroom?
Now, you could have just accepted that
Could've.
and been like, this is what it is. This is the system. This is not what I want. You know, this, they know best. But that didn't happen.
No. So it was towards the end of the school year when we were getting to this point. And I again went home, told my husband, look, this is not, I can't send him to school. They are not, they're not CPR certified. They have no idea what they're doing with my child. And at that point, he was having 2 and 3 seizures back to back, and he stops breathing and on and on. Anyone, his personal teacher, the one that was with him for half of the day, says, I will get certified. And
again, the people within the system that's broken. That
I said, I will train you. We have a business. This is what I do. I will train you personally. Here's the video. Let me know when it's done. I will come back to you. You don't even have to come to me. I will come back to you. We will do skills. Done. I said, but I want to offer this to the entire district because I don't know who's going to be around him. And you're only here for half a day with him. So I'm offering this for free.
So right now, and I want to highlight this because in this story, what I'm hearing is, again, what you've done is that you've let go of the rope and now you're looking for solutions. You're looking forward now to say, listen, I got to let go of what I think about the system or whatever the case is. I have a goal and I want to accomplish the goal and I'm trying to move forward to the goal.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
And in that space of doing that, you are now coming up with solutions, and the people that are going to buy into that to turn around and help you create that now, whether they're on board or they're not on board. Right? And so, and I really wanted you to talk about this because, we're going to talk about IEPs and all these other things in a different, that's a whole other conversation. But the concept here is that a lot of people give up right here. Yeah. Right? They give up right here because nobody said that letting go of the rope meant that it was going to be easy.
No.
We didn't say that. But what we are really still getting at is that the ability for you to function in a way that's right for you, for your family, for what that entails. And many times we get caught up in what does not serve us, right? Because it should happen, or we have a feeling about that and it doesn't help us. Because if the system is stacked, well, are there financial strategies that can afford? Is there other things that you can turn around and do? Like you said, like right now you guys are in a hybrid system. And in the hybrid system, there are things that you get from being part of that space still, right?
Yeah.
That you still have access to, but you took back control to say, listen, this is what I want for my kids, and you're able to turn around and do those different things. So in the hybrid system, you took what you can take from that, right, and control that space while also getting the goals and moving forward the way that you needed to. And I just want to raise this because, like you said, it wasn't about George, it was about your other child now, right? And in that space, you were able to turn around and say, listen, okay, well, what's the next thing that I can do? And how is my family going to move forward in this space? Because that's not just now. That's like they're getting older. Well, what's the next stage? What's the next stage? What do we do next, right? And that to me is super powerful because that's the space that I really want parents to be equipped. That's why we talk about the Breaking Limits podcast. That's why we want to do the 8-week payment in part, because we need to start thinking differently. I really feel like we need, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we really need to start thinking differently about the space. The space is broken. There's a lot of trials and there's a lot of variability within the space, right? Some people have great programs in their school that works for them, but also for the level of the child that's there. I have my own thoughts about the fact that IEPs in the school system, there's a lot of misunderstandings of what's expected. And in that space of, the lack of expectation and lack of education about what can happen in that space and what might need to happen outside of that space, people feel trapped.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to feel trapped. I want people to turn around and say, hey, where can we find the answers that we need to move forward? Because that's the ultimate goal. Okay. Now, another one, and I want to wrap up with this one, is that, and it goes around the space about gut. Because, and I know we're talking about the parents specifically today, but I want to talk about the space of acceptance and self-care and your gut space, right? Because when you guys think that something's going on and you guys are fierce advocates for your kids, but also when something's going on with you, you're not fierce advocates for yourself in that space, and because somebody said to me, or I was reading somewhere, that acceptance of the diagnosis does not equal just a devotion where you have to sacrifice yourself and martyr yourself to the space. And that's a tough thing to talk about, because I am not saying by any means that you guys are not doing everything that you guys can for your kids and doing that, but I want to really hit the gap. And the gap is, does that equal sacrificing yourself in the process? No. Because the decisions that are being made, the ability for you to stand up to that, in that space, in that doctor, and say, listen, you're not helping. This isn't the solution. You've gotten what you need, but we haven't gotten what we need to walk out of that office. But how, in that space, when you turn around and say, listen, in my self-care space, or in what it is that I need to do, and I need to turn around and understand what I'm about, what I stand for, what my family stands for, how I communicate with the people that I communicate with, what I can control, this is how I'm going to step out. I'm not going to get sidelined, or I'm not going to get distracted by the parents who, okay, you've got it together. I'm happy that you've got it together, but I'm still struggling. The person who doesn't understand what's happening with a tantrum that's going on, right? And so this space of you guys being empowered is a space that, for me, that's what this is based on. The breaking limits and everything is really for the gap, for the parents who don't feel empowered and feel like acceptance equals this martyrdom and devotion. And I know a lot of people are going to comment about this, but I truly don't believe that that's the space.
It's not.
Comments.
It's not. It takes a lot to get to that point. And for one person, it might look like a lot more, and it might be a lot less. But I think if you're open to the idea that maybe if you can find alternate ways to do anything that you want, I think you can outline what it is you're looking for, and again, look at the different avenues, because there's more than one way to do really anything.
Absolutely.
I think for us, that was that was like the really pivotal point for the entire family. We went home and again told my husband what was going on, and he's like, well, what are you gonna do? Because
he's also a doer.
Now he's going, what do you want me to do? And what are you gonna do? And do I need to be there?
Right.
And at that point it was like, no, you don't. Just be on board with the fact that I'm signing the affidavit at the district tomorrow and they're not going back. And that was that. I took all three of them out, all three of the boys. And I did leave Georgia because I didn't really understand what it was going to look like for her if I took her out, because she did have the IEP, albeit it was a half a page long, literally. I wasn't sure, so I didn't sign one for her. But they graciously just did it for me, which I didn't find out about until years later when I was like, I wonder when they're going to contact me to reevaluate this IEP, because that was supposed to be done 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But it was very liberating. Like, I had no idea what I was going to do, and it was kind of a nerve-wracking, like, what did I just do? But at the same time, it was like, I am taking control, and that feels 1,000 times better than waking up angry at a bunch of people who are just showing up to clock in. They're really not, none of them, no one person here has the control. No one person here is making the rules. They're just doing what the next guy up said to do. And when I realized how liberating that was, it got really crazy really fast. Because then it turned around and went, well, why are we living where we're living? We bought this house as an investment situation. We were going to sell it. And so we called the realtor, and the sign was in the yard like a week later. And we moved out. And we had no idea where we wanted to be, but we knew we wanted to be somewhere where it was going to be good for all of us. Somewhere that was cohesive to the entire family and whatever it was that we were moving forward to, which we didn't know at that point what that was. But it was a different avenue that we never thought we would take. We never saw that coming for us, but it gave us a lot of freedom and, like I said, that liberation of like, I'm taking control, which definitely overpowered getting up and being angry with a bunch of people who had no idea who I even was. Or that they were avoiding me because I was walking through the door again.
But it also quieted those voices, I'm sure. Those voices that basically turned around and said, you know what, I'm not sure what I'm doing. They know better than me, right? Or
For me, I remember that next morning I got up and I was like, I had my paper and my pen, like I'm going to write my to-do list. And I'm like, okay, I need to get their records and find out where they're at. And they wouldn't release, like they wouldn't give them to me. We don't have those. That's not true, but okay, that's where that's at. Okay, I'll do my own testing to find out because that's where we're at. Okay, check, check, check. Oh, my 5th grader doesn't know how to do math and English. My 3rd grader doesn't read as well as I thought he did. My kindergartner doesn't know his alphabet. Now, that one I did feel bad about because he kind of got lost in the whole Georgie thing, but I was relying on a system that I thought was working. And when I realized that I had just made the best choice in my life, like if there was any choice that was going to be life-altering, this was probably it. I just went, okay, we're just going to back up. We're going to fill in these holes, and we're going to move forward. We're going to learn about these things that we need to learn about and what our avenues are, and we're not going to rest until we do. Fast forward a few years, we're in that space now. We have a very good idea of where it is we want to be. We have a very good idea of what we want that to look like, and we are now able to say, okay, we need to take the stepping stone here. We'll take the bridge here, and then we will be where we want to be.
I think, just wrapping that all up, I think the power of clarity empowers. Because what I'm hearing as you're telling me these different things is that as you got clearer, as you were so intentional and deliberate in your actions, and not worried about what everybody else was doing or saying, and the power of the clarity that you have, that's when things started to open up, not just for you. And you said something, and I want to point this out, it's so dramatic, because you said, we're trying to make decisions, and it wasn't just about making decisions for Georgie, you're making decisions for your family as a unit. And oftentimes the family unit breaks down because so much energy and so much, because again, just saying this, the guilt and the grief and all these other things, it takes hold of you. And in allowing it to take hold of you, many people get stuck. And the family breaks down because of those different things. So the ability for you to turn around and let go of some of that and say, listen, I may not know where this is going. I may not know all the different things. I may not have the PhD. I may not have all these other things, but I'm going to turn around and take the next step because I've painted a picture as to what is it that we're trying to create for ourselves. Where is it that we're going? And then the power of that clarity allows you to step into that space. And I'm telling you, I truly believe in the power of the universe. When you step into those spaces and you tune that, different things start showing up in your life. Like you said, things started happening like that. And as things started happening like that, it changed the sequence of things that maybe you didn't see that from the beginning. No. All you knew is that you had to take the next step. You had to move forward, but that would have never happened if you kept holding on to everything and accepting everything in that space. And so that leads me to the last thing, which is really about joy. Because when it is that you guys have that space, it's not saying that there are not tough days. There are tough days, I'm sure, still, right? But the joy that you now have with your family when you can go traveling, right, to Europe and leave me behind. I'm not bitter at all, but that's okay. And the trips that you're taking, the next one, I'm on the next one,
On the
right?
next one. Okay?
The memories, though, the moments are the memories.
Yeah.
And we're so worried about how to fix things, how to move things forward, that we forget about the moments. And the moments are the memories. And you guys are doing the best that you can. So stop surviving it and start living it. And in that space, when you're feeling powered and you guys can live in that space, that to me is powerful beyond. And you guys create what you want, you know.
We talk about it a lot, especially in the last year or so. We're tired of certain parts of trailer life. We've definitely feel like we have learned what we needed to in order to make those next choices.
Right.
But had we stayed where we were at and tried to keep doing what we were doing, it was going to destroy a lot of us. And it was going to create a lot of disconnect and a lot of unhappiness. And when you don't have, for lack of better words, all of that negativity that is feeding in at all those different directions, and what you are doing in that very moment is because you need to do it, because that's what's next. All of that quiets down, and everything has a purpose. And that's when you start being free. That's when you start living like you want to live. And if it's surely just the quietness, that alone is enough to survive on.
That's priceless.
Like, you can't put a price tag on it.
Awesome, thank you. So let that sink in, guys. If something here has really hit home in that space of that conversation that we're having, what I want you to ask yourselves are a couple of questions. What are you really, really ready to believe about yourself right now? What are you believing about yourself right now that potentially where you're holding on to things that ultimately you can let go of? The next thing is, what are you no longer able to carry, and you've got to put it down. You've got to put it down because it's stopping you from moving forward or living that life or creating that life. Because ultimately, what I do want everybody to do is sit down and really just brain dump. I don't care. Don't tell me why it's not happening. I just want you to create and paint the picture of what is happening, what you do want to happen. Don't put any caveats or anything like that, but put that out there as to what it is that you're working towards, and get really clear on that. And because what future are you brave enough to build and to move forward in that space? Because when you're filled with the confidence and the clarity and the connection, it's not a dream. Guys, this is going to become your reality because it starts with a decision. It starts with the decision, and it starts with the clarity. So, I want to thank you guys for joining us today and talking about this space, the power of belief, rewriting your story. I want each of you guys to rewrite your story. We want to also invite you to join our conversation group, our free Facebook group, Beyond the Diagnosis, rewriting their story for the parents with kids with special needs, and also to join us on future podcasts. What I want you guys to do is please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because we want to know what you guys are thinking, what you guys are going through, so we can address these different things. We can bring in the experts, we can talk, we can dive deeper into this. But I want the raw, I want the real talk, I want the real breakthroughs for you guys and for your families. And with that, until next time, keep breaking limits. This is Dr. Vivian Pierre with Emily Woods, signing off for another episode.